Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is a phenomenal brother that I had a chance to be connected with through a mutual friend of ours. Spoke very highly of him and said, "You must have this young man on your show." And so I did not hesitate to reach out, and we were able to make it happen this evening. This young man is an author, he's a poet, but the beautiful thing about him is he's a man of God, and he's taking time out of his very busy schedule to hang out with us this evening to share a little bit of his journey, a little bit of his story with the hopes of inspiring and encouraging and uplifting others. So it is my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you our very special guest this evening, Mr. Jayden Pope. Jayden, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we jump into our segments this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do, kind of give our listeners a taste of who is Jayden Pope.
Yep. So I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. Um, right now, I'm currently in school at A&T. So I'm a college student. I want to be a chemical engineer, and that's kind of the bulk of my life right now.
Okay, okay. I mean, that's good. I mean, you're in school, you're talking about chemical. What inspired you to want to go into that particular field of study?
Honestly, I've always been really good at math and science.
Okay.
And I just always knew I was going to do some type of engineering, and chemical is the one that kind of dives into all the other ones. So me being indecisive, I kind of chose chemical.
Nice, nice, nice. And so, what year is this for you in school?
So this I have one more year left
All right,
after
all
this one.
right.
Yep.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Well, Jayden, anytime anybody that listens to our show here, they know that, when we start talking about one's journey, one of the things that I always like to do is take a moment of reflection to go back to kind of where things all start, because the truth is that, as you're, going through your years of life and trying to figure out, what direction you're supposed to go in, not just career wise, but ultimately the purpose that God intended for you to walk in. It makes you kind of think back, on the people that you've met over the years, the encounters that you've had over the years, whether they've been good or troubling or challenging in some kind of way. And while they may not always make sense when you're going through it in the moment, as you mature and walk into your purpose, you begin to start seeing the light bulbs come on. You begin to kind of connect the dots and say, you know what, that's why I had to go through what I went through. That's why I encountered this individual or that individual in this particular situation, because it was setting me up for what God intended for me to be and to walk in terms of my purpose. So with that said, I would like to take a few moments to have you take us back, to the beginning, and share with us, what was it like for you growing up? Fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there's any challenges that come to mind that you'd like to share, you can do that as well. Kind of give us a backdrop of where your story begins.
Yes, sir. So growing up, I definitely have way more fond memories than negative ones. I grew up in a one-parent household, but I had both my parents though. Both my parents were very active in my life, and growing up, I can't really say I definitely struggled at times, but I never was without, never was like anything like that. So everything was smooth sailing. Everything I won't say smooth sailing, but everything was well enough for me to become who I am now.
Uh,
One challenge I will say early on, like in my youth, I moved a lot, a lot, a
mm,
lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. Like so, I was very kind of nomadic in a way when it came to even making friends and stuff like that, going from school to school to school. At times, different states. So yeah, I kind of came became a part of me in a way, affected me in negative ways, but also affected me in positive ways. I was always very great academically, even through all of that. Was always athletic, always playing sports and stuff like that. And yeah, overall, that kind of was what made up my youth years.
all right, all right. Well, that first of all, that's very awesome to hear. I mean, because again, and I can relate in the sense of what it like to grow up in a single parent home, and but it's always a good thing when you can grow up in that type of environment, but not feel like you were lacking in anything. That speaks right offhand to the support of your mom and being there for you and making sure that you're provided for and things of that nature. And I could just hear just in the first few minutes of being with you, the way you speak and in the area of focus that you're in, that I could tell that this isn't by accident that you are the way that you are and walking in the path that you are, because you clearly had a support system in
Yes,
place, which is
sir.
very important to have, in order to kind of, navigate those challenging times, especially, growing up, because, when we're kids, we don't always, understand. It doesn't always make sense to us why this is necessary. And then for you to speak to the fact about having to move around a lot, it makes it difficult for you to kind of get established in friendships. And, sometimes it may even, and you can tell me if I'm correct or not, sometimes it may even be have a hesitancy, if you will, to get too close to people just because
Absolutely.
I'm worried that, 6 months from now I'm up out of here and I
Absolutely.
ain't gonna be able to, maybe not even see them ever again. So, so for you to share that, I appreciate your transparency in that, because there's a lot of, young people and even people, seasoned years that, still struggle to this day from having grown up in that type of setting, and it's made it difficult for them to establish relationships and things of that nature. So I appreciate you sharing that. One thing that I'm interested in delving into, of course, as I introduced you at the top of the show, I made mention, I know that you're into, not just writing, but specifically you do poetry. What was
Yes,
it
sir.
about poetry that kind of, what drew you into that? And what is it about poetry that you enjoy the most?
So what drew me into it, when I became a man of faith, I started writing to God.
Hmm.
I find it very easy to get my thoughts down more so when I write them out more so because my head be running a mile a minute, so I just got to get stuff down on paper. But yes, I would write down certain things, like basic conversations between me and God. And over time, when I got comfortable, I would share them with people close to me, and they would read them. And they'd be like, "It sounds like poetic. Like it sounds like poet. It almost sounds like David in the way that you communicate with God." And it just clicked. I was like, I could start just writing these as poetry, like more so than even like a letter. I can turn it into poetry, and I started doing that, and I didn't know I was good at it. When I figured out I was good at it, I was like, wow, this must be a gift that God gave me, and it's just I love it because I love being able to be creative, and being able to mix that also with me talking to God. So it's like it actually brings like fun into my conversation with them. So yeah.
That's pretty cool. I love that. I love that. And just so for our listeners' sake, let me first off say, you, in all of the 250 shows that I've done so far since I've had this broadcast, this podcast, you are my youngest guest that I've ever had on the
Oh
show
wow.
before. So this is a milestone moment for the podcast, and I am interested in knowing, two-part question: when did you make the decision to give your life to Christ, and also share, how old were you when that happened, and also share with our listeners how old you are right now.
Okay. So first and foremost, just to get the background with me and God in general, I should have said that in the background portion, but I grew up in church. My grandfather was a pastor. I grew up around people who were heavily entrenched in church. My mom was very instrumental in keeping me and my sister in church, and she also was my first example of seeing somebody have a relationship with God up close. But me personally, I over time like just wanted to run from it. I didn't want the pressure of it, the rules, whatever we want to call them. And I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So I ran for a while, for a while, for a while, for a while. Just ran from God. And it just got to the point I came to college and I kind of felt him pulling me more than ever. So I started running more than ever. But my first year at college, uh, it was a huge tug of war. It was a huge tug of war between me and God on my identity and what I was going to be doing throughout college. And I got through the first year the way I wanted to, but which we can dive into in your next segment. Uh, there was something that happened over that summer that kind of shifted my whole college experience. And that next semester was very, very, very hard. I was very depressed. I was doing stuff, doing drugs, doing everything. And long story short, it just got to a point where everything came to a head where I couldn't run anymore. It's like he almost allowed me to get to a broken place to see what I actually needed. And that was the end of 2023 going into 2024. So that's officially when I can say I gave my life to Christ. So I'll say I was what, 19,
Okay.
and I'm 21 now.
Awesome, awesome. And again, I can totally relate when you speak, because a lot of people talk about this, how many of us grew up in church, but the challenge is when you're growing up in church is, while it's good to be surrounded, in that environment, and learning about God and how He moves in your life and why it's important to have that relationship. Again, when you're younger, for many young people, it's the struggle between, am I doing it because I've actually established a relationship with God, I'm trying to build something, or do I feel like I'm kind of forced into it, the pressure of it, because my family, goes to church, my mom or my dad making me go, and so I'm kind of there by default, but I'm not necessarily rooted in a relationship. And I think even for those who have grown up like that, I think that there has to be a point in life where, as you stated, where there's a breaking of you, breaking down of you, to the point where God says, okay, I know you grew up and heard about me, and experienced me in bits and pieces, but there comes a point in time when you need to know me, like where we personally have a
Yeah.
one-on-one intimate relationship. And that's why I like when you talked about your poetry earlier. And I don't know if you paid attention to the title, that's why I selected that title. I'm thinking, you spoke about, again, having an intimate dialogue with God. That's what you had to transition into. But in order for you to get to that point of intimacy with God, for those who are not understanding of that process, it typically requires a breaking, if you will. There typically requires a storm that you got to
Yeah.
go through, that takes you to a place that only God can get you out of. That you can't fix this yourself. You can't manufacture your way out of it. It's you have no choice but to stand face to face with God and give it to Him, and then watch what He does with that. And of course, for those of us who've had that moment, we know it's very transformational. We know it's very powerful. It's life changing in the most impactful way possible. So again, I appreciate you sharing that, and as you said, we're going to dive a little bit deeper in that in just a moment. Um, so Jayden, again, I know you're just 21 years old, and but a lot can happen in one's life, and even in those short amount of years, and clearly you had an overall a pretty solid upbringing, like you said, no real regrets, or feeling like as if you were lacking in any type of way. But the reality is, even in our late teens and early 20s, you could find yourself approaching situations in life where you might be faced with a situation that hits a little different. And when I say hit a little different, hits you in a way where I can't talk my way out of this. I can't pay my way out of this. I'm facing a storm. I'm facing a situation that's so heavy, that's so overwhelming, that even with all my athletic skills and talents and all of that, I can't juke my way out of it. I can't move my way out of it. It's me in this storm. So if you would, tell us about a time that's exactly how you felt, that you were going through, see a way out. You had the fears, the anxieties, the worries, didn't know how you were going to do it. Obviously, you're here today to tell the story, so we can trust that God navigated and worked that thing out. But maybe as you were going through it, you didn't quite know if that was possible. So if you would kind of walk us through what that situation was like for you, and what was the ultimate turning point when you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming up out of that.
Yes, sir. So, to piggyback to that summer, the summer, going from my freshman to my sophomore year of college, um, I'm gonna connect things so it can kind of make more sense of just the impact of it. So, just growing up in general, you actually spoke about it. It was really hard to get deeply rooted in friendships, or get deeply rooted just in friend groups or whatever, because I never knew when I was gonna be gone, or I would have to do it all over again. So I kind of just made popcorn relationships
Mm-hmm.
throughout life growing up. And I get to college, and I find that I have a friend group, and I get kind of close with all these people. And over the summer, one of them unfortunately passes away. He gets killed. And that's kind of when I talked to the most. That's when I kind of got to a point where um, we had more deep conversation than anybody else. So I kind of knew more about him than all the rest of them, and it kind of really threw me off. Like, it threw me for a loop because, on one hand, especially growing up and stuff, death is oh so common in my family. So it threw me off the way that I felt about it, because I've been to plenty of funerals in my life, with family and stuff, but it really touched me in a way. that I couldn't just like push it to the back of my head. And honestly, it kind of sent me deeper into um, basically me running from God in a way, my self medication, whether that be smoking weed or women. That was also what I kind of used to try to kind of like push it to the back of my head. And basically, I was just running from my grief. I didn't want to feel the grief. I didn't want to really actually face the fact that I really was grieving from what had happened. Because I wasn't used to actually facing grief, and that's what that situation showed me about my whole life. All the family members that died, all the death I experienced previously, I just masked it the whole time. And I think it really all came to a head with when he passed away. Like it all just balled up together, and, and I was just holding it in, and I'm trying my best to do all these distracting things to keep it from coming out. And it was just one particular day. And this is crazy because it's just crazy how God can find you like exactly where you are. But I was actually in my apartment and I actually was under the influence of something. And it was at that moment I kind of realized that there was nothing I could do to hold it back. Like it was coming. Like I can't hold this grief back and I have nowhere to place it. And the only person whose hands I know will be safe in is God's. And that was the moment that I actually gave my life to God. I was actually on my floor in my apartment, and it's the first time I've ever actually cried out to God
Hmm.
for Him to come save me from what I was going through. And that was the first and initial remedy to the big problem that was going on.
Wow. Wow. Uh, Again, let me first off thank you for your transparency and sharing that. It's I'll never do this with anybody to say that I understand what you are dealing with, because everybody's grief is very unique and individual to their person, to their circumstances, to that moment. Losing a person that you confided in, that you shared some very vulnerable moments with, knew things about them, they knew things about you that the average person doesn't know. It's hard to imagine losing people like that in your life. Even like I said, even if you had the experiences of going to a multitude of funerals over the course of your life, when it's that person that's close to you like that, that hits a little different in your life like that, and then they're gone, and then to be gone in a tragic way, as you stated, it can be very difficult to process grief, and even just to hear you speak about how you know battled through that at such a young age. There are people who are twice, two, three times your age who struggle even to today, trying to process the grief because they don't have a place to sit it. Well, they have a place to sit it, but they just don't know what to do with it. And as you stated, what oftentimes happens is that you to not confront it, you instead tap into what I'd like to refer to as just sort of reckless behaviors, if you will. And like I said, whether it be drugs, whether it be women, whatever that thing may be, to just kind of, like I said, self medicate, to self soothe, so you don't have to think about it. But what's happening in the meantime is that you're kind of tearing yourself up inside. It's like you're holding in a pain, you're holding in a hurt that you haven't allowed yourself the grace to begin the healing process from.
Hmm.
And so, but the beautiful thing, as you shared, is that, God loves us so much that he was there with you the whole time, and he saw what you were going through, but he also recognized that you were trying to fix yourself, which a lot of us are guilty of doing in moments like that. We try to fix it ourselves. We try to tune it out, block it out like it didn't happen, when you're not required to block it out and act like it didn't happen. And you do have permission to express how you feel, whether that's a bursting out of tears, whether it's a scream in the air, whether it's a punch against the wall, whatever that is, to get it out. It's important that you have that moment to release and to let it go, up out of you, so that again, you're in a space, you're in a vulnerable, intimate moment where now God can step in and feel what is currently a void in your life. He could feel that with that comfort, with that peace, that helps you to not necessarily forget what happened, because I'm sure you'll never forget what happened to your close friend. But it helps you to be able to process the loss of the friend a little bit easier, a little bit better. So as the time goes on, yeah, I still remember it, still hurts, but instead of now, as you transition years and years later, instead of me focusing on the hurt and the loss, I start to think more about the good times that we shared and the happy moments and things like that. So it allows me to process it a little bit differently. And so, and I see that in you and what you're saying about losing a close friend. I mean, I've lost a close friend before, and and then as you were sharing your story, I mean, I think the closest one that I would call friend that I lost was my mom. And so when you were describing some of the emotions and the feelings, I totally related that, because when you get into that moment, for those who who truly understand what grieving the loss of somebody close to you is feels like, it's like you don't care. You just kind of get into it. I don't care. And you
Just
just
here.
it's just like it's just whatever. It's just I don't care what you think. I don't care. I don't give a care. I'm just going to wild out, whatever wild out looks like, and it is what it is, and so be it. But again, to get into that moment while it's understandable, it's not healthy. And so
Mhm.
I'm thankful for you that you did get to the moment where God showed you, hey, I was never going to let you totally go out on this. But I did have to let you break down to a point where, in this moment, this is where you were going to be most likely in the best position possible to hear from him. And to your response, it was like, for the first time in my life, I cried out to him. And there's no shame in that. And I'm glad you, as a young man, are saying I cried out, and I cried out to God, because I want if there's any other men that have an opportunity, young or old, to tune into this, because a lot of times as men, one of the things that we struggle with is our ability to be vulnerable, to be
Yes, sir.
transparent, to say that I hurt, to say that that this doesn't feel good to me, because we've been taught, in my era, and I'm even sure in your era, you grow up being taught you got to be tough, you got to be a man. We don't cry, we don't, that's soft. That's you're a punk when you do that. We don't. And the truth is that, just like women, men have every right to be vulnerable, and it doesn't make you a weak person. It doesn't make you a soft person. It doesn't make you any less of a man because you are an emotional being. If you hurt, you hurt. It doesn't matter the gender. I hurt. And so I'm glad you're speaking on this, because there are men that, again, I hope have an opportunity to hear your story, that need to hear that it's okay to be transparent, to be vulnerable, to be in your emotions. Now, you don't want to stay stuck there, but it definitely is okay to let that out. And that's exactly what you did. And it makes perfect sense when I think about what you're doing today with your writing and things like that, because now you have an outlet to take pains
Yes,
of the
sir.
past, and now you can transition that to be a blessing to people. So that's the other side of the coin as well, is that when we go through our storms, a lot of times people don't realize it, but that, we have to kind of ask ourselves, was this storm even about me to begin with? Or was it for a bigger purpose? Was it for a bigger moment where God had to take you, in your case, take you through that, had to take you to a loss that was different than the regular losses of life that you will encounter, but it was necessary to catapult you to be where you are right now, and where you're going to be. Because I truly do believe that in the months and the years to come, that what you got going on right now is great, but you just getting started. You're just getting started. But it and the beautiful thing is that he's connecting with you at a very early age. You're getting ahead of the game. You don't have to wait till you're old and gray to figure it out. You're figuring it out now, and you're walking in it. You're now owning it. You're embracing it. You instead of running from it, as you said in the beginning. I was like, I don't want
Yes,
nothing to do
sir.
with that. you know, So I mean, that's beautiful, man. And again, I appreciate you sharing that. Very, very powerful. And because grief is just one of those topics that can be very touchy, but the one thing I do tell people as well, whenever I'm in those kind of conversations, is don't ever let anybody tell you, and I would even say it to you, don't let anybody ever tell you how long you're supposed to grieve, how you should be over that now. It just that happened back. No, you don't get permission to tell me how to grieve, how long it should take, if I should forget about it and move on. No, because everybody has their own way to grieve, and there is no timetable on it, but there is a healthy way to do it. And so we want to drive home both of those points. So again, I appreciate you sharing that. So Jayden, obviously of course, we just talked about a very deep, powerful subject: losing a friend, to murder, to and a battle that grief can get to you and really get into your head, into your heart in a destructive kind of way. But the truth is that while some storms can be heavy like that, sometimes life is just life, and you just might have a casual day to day happening that goes on. Somebody get on your nerves, a random flat tire, whatever it might be that just disrupts your spirit, and you got to deal with this particular challenge in the moment. So, with that said, when you do find yourself going through stuff, big or small, what is it in particular that you like to do that kind of just allows you to stay focused, stay locked in, while you're trying to work through whatever that situation is that you find yourself up against? What does that look like for you?
So we're going to preference this with if I respond the right way. When I do when I do respond correctly, um, a lot of times it is writing. It's getting the first and foremost getting the thoughts out of my head because it's when we let thoughts fester, they send us places. So it's getting the thoughts out of my head, and then once I write them down, I can read everything that I feel, and then I can like go through what I feel and see like was this really number one, is it really that serious? So start there. Two, if it is that serious, how should I move forward with this? And then from there, it's just like it's just I. Long story short, just the writing process bring cools me down. It brings me down whether I'm anxious, whether I'm whatever. Just writing it down, just seeing it, just seeing like I'm taking myself out of it and watching what's going on.
Love that. Love that. Of course, there's a lot of people, who, speak very highly of the concept of journaling and things of that nature. So it's a very powerful thing. And again, it's also a way to kind of release in a way that doesn't get us in trouble or doesn't send us into a destructive thing. Like you said, to just kind of be able to look at it, to put the words to paper and look at it. It's easy to see how by looking at it, you can kind of determine, is it really that serious? Or am I just in my feelings right now? Is it really something that I can't overcome? Or is this just simply a minor inconvenience, a minor bump in the road? And more times than not, that's exactly what it is. But if we allow our emotions to get the best of us, or we don't have an outlet, just like we talked about with grief, if we don't have something to get that out of our head, get this out of our heart, and get it on paper where we can look at it, then we're not positioning ourselves to be able to ultimately hear from God to say, okay, Jayden, these are the next steps. Now that you got it out on paper, now that you took a deep breath and calmed down, here's the move. Now you
Yes,
can
sir.
hear
And
from him.
I want to say I would also add, this is something I've learned probably more recently in the last recent months, even with the writing and seeing what's going on from a bird's eye view. So what I've kind of learned is just like when it comes to all our feelings are real. Every feeling that
Hmm.
you have is real, but then there's a flip side to it. It's like all feelings are real, but all feelings are not valid. So that's the second part that you have to get to understand. Like, is this what I'm feeling right now is definitely real, but is it valid towards the situation? Is it valid for me to feel this right now? And that's kind of something I'm actually working towards now to be able to do like clockwork. But yeah,
Yeah, and I love that you pointed that out because again, there's many of us with years on with years on our lives that haven't figured that out. That like you have to kind of separate the two. You have a right to feel. That I'm not. It's not for us to tell you that you can't feel a certain kind of way about something. But then, as you said, there has to be an assessment moment. There has to be, okay, now that I've expressed how I feel, are those feelings valid? Or again, am I reading something into this that's not there? Am I fabricating something in my mind that making it more than what it is? And we if we're not careful, we can be in jeopardy of doing just that. We'll create the fear. We'll create the anxiety. We'll add stuff to it that wasn't even there.
mhm.
Um, something that was real basic. We've blown it up into something just trying to, oh, they probably saying this or it was this or that. And it, again, being able to logically break it down in those two phases that you mentioned helps to, again, have a better perspective and outlook on it. And then, of course, you connect God into it. Now
Yes,
he
I'm
gives
about
you
to
the
say yes,
right
sir.
way to
The,
approach it.
I was about to say, and that's the second part to it when it comes to the validity. The best judge of validity of feelings is the word of God.
Hmm.
So literally, if our feelings or how we feel doesn't align with the word of God, that tells us, okay, that feeling was real, but it's not valid.
Exactly, man. So definitely solid point. And for my listeners, I hope you're taking notes because this young man is dropping some nuggets of things that we do need to keep in mind as we're processing those challenging times and those storms. Yeah, you got a right to be upset. You got a right to feel some kind of way. It's okay, But yeah, at some point we got to validate that. Is it really all that, or is it really that serious? Is it worth me, losing a friendship? Is it worth me creating, some animosity that didn't need to be there? Is it worth me, popping off in a way, saying something that I can't take back? Doing hurtful things to others or to myself. Is it really worth that? And but that's the thing that God will help to help you to have the discernment and knowing. And as you said, best thing to do is when I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling and I'm trying to process that thing, if I really want to know the answer to my question of the validity part of it, line it up with the word. If the word lines up with where I'm at, then I know I'm processing this thing the right way. If it doesn't, then I need to kind of step back and do some self-reflection, like, okay, maybe I need to rethink this. Maybe I need to pivot a little bit again. And if I've done something, a little bit knee jerk or abrupt, I might need to go and extend some apologies for my behavior, in those cases.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, good stuff, good stuff. So, so Jayden, when I know you're just like I said, I know you're just 21 years old, and but you still a grown man. And the reality is that you've had some experiences in life that clearly there's a version of you, I should say, that you are today that in some regards you weren't back in the day. And so, with that said, if you could speak to the pre giving his life to Christ Jayden, the one who used to handle challenges and storms in life a little bit different than the Jayden of today does, um, what would you impart in him? What words of wisdom, what words of encouragement would you like younger Jayden to know that you feel like had he known that, he might have been able to navigate those challenges in life a little bit different? Maybe he would have been able to handle the constant moving around a little bit different, that isolated him, that made him a little hesitant to develop bonds of friendship or things of that nature. As well as I want you to think about people who are tuning in who may have gone through or may be going through some of what you talked about, that uneasiness in developing bonds and friendships, and maybe not being very good at handling grief. And because they too have had a close person in their family or in their life that they lost, and they're struggling with that. What would you say to them, and what would you say to the younger version of Jayden?
So three simple words that just easily popped in my head that I would say to my younger self is open your mouth.
Mm,
Um, and that was because I was very quiet as a kid as well. I did make friends a lot, of course, but I was very reserved at the same time. And even with that, it kind of fostered me bottling a lot of stuff in. And that could culminate to the grief that I felt, and it building up and it coming to a head at one point. That could also be me feeling a certain way about moving this place and that place and that place, having to have all these different friends in all these different places and having to manage relationships and stuff like that, but never voicing how I felt about it. And I think that was a big detriment to me, because a lot of times, especially when we don't voice how we feel, and it just sits in us, it opens up and it snowballs and it builds offense, it builds trauma, and it builds things that should have never been built if it would have came out. So I would definitely just say, open your, don't be afraid to say how you feel.
love that, love that. And again, I can relate because I was kind of to myself as well, kind of quiet, soft spoken coming up, and and sometimes you feel in a certain kind of way, but you don't want to offend, you don't want to, you don't want to appear that you can't handle certain things, and so you keep it in. But
Hmm.
keeping that in oftentimes is like the equivalent of keeping poison inside of you, and
Yep.
somehow thinking that you'll feel better eventually if you but we all know that if you literally have poison inside of you and you're trying to hold it inside, there's going to come a point where something is going to erupt, something is going to
Hmm.
top off to where, like you said, you may have that explosive moment, and it may again be destructive, whether it's to other people or to yourself or to both. And so opening your mouth, expressing how you feel, and not being worried about what people are thinking or going to say about it. You have a right to speak your voice, to speak your mind. We always want to do things, obviously, in a mode of respect
Mhm.
and and proper space and place for certain conversations. But nevertheless, if you got an opinion, if you got a thought about something, if something makes you feel some kind of way, you should be able to be comfortable in your skin. And anybody that that you're interacting with, especially if they call themselves a friend or if they're a family member, they should be able to respect you having your feelings or your opinions. Now, we can get into a debate about a particular subject matter. You can have your side of it, I can have my side of it, and if we have a mutual respect for one another, we can reach the decision to agree to disagree, and that's
Yes,
okay.
sir.
you know um but to feel like I can't say anything around you because every time I don't align with what I say to you, you're offended, and now you're gonna treat me some kind of way, or I'm the one who's acting that way. It's because it's funny you bring this up because I've been having a conversation even just recently with my daughter. I have an 18-year-old, and she has a friend who has a tendency that when conversations sometimes come up and you're not in alignment with what she says, she makes you feel some kind of way, and she kind of gets cold and sends you through this whole like, why you not talking to me and all this kind of stuff. And when you're a person who, it's not natural for you to just react and be mean to somebody, you still feel like, what, was I wrong? Did I say anything? And in your heart that you didn't do anything wrong, but when people make you feel like that, it can hinder you in a way where I just won't say anything, or I'll only say what they want to hear. And you don't want to embrace that mentality, because if you do that as a young person, I guarantee you, if you delve into that too deeply, you'll carry that well into your adulthood, and you'll carry it into relationships, and it'll lead you into a toxic circle of events, where you'll get into situations where you strip yourself of boundaries, you strip yourself of standards as to how people are to interact and treat you. And so I'm harping on this because I think you brought up a very, very powerful point, that you got to open your mouth. Open your mouth. It's okay. Open your mouth again, with respect, with appropriateness, but you should be able to open your mouth and not be worried about if somebody receives it the way that you don't have to go small just because somebody can't handle what you got to say. You don't have to
Mhm.
regress because somebody can't handle what you got to say. They can receive it or they cannot receive it. We could be good either way. But I said it. I said what I said. So, sometimes it's just like that. So, appreciate that. Appreciate that. So, my brother, man, Jayden, this has been cool hanging out with you, learning about your
Sir.
story. This has been everything that I was hoping it would be, and then some. You did not disappoint. I'm so appreciative of having you on the show, and you being transparent and vulnerable as you have. You've blessed me, you've blessed my listeners, and I truly do appreciate that. And know that you're welcome to at any point in time to come back on the show for future opportunities. I would love to have you back, because I think I'm certain that God is not done with you yet, and that there's more miraculous and wonderful things that He's going to be doing with your life, man, that people need to hear. And so I'm glad that we had a chance to connect and make this moment happen. So I do appreciate you being with me. But as is customary on the Blessings in the Streets podcast, before I let you go, we do want to take an opportunity, man, to celebrate you, to love on you, to lift you up. So if you got anything going on
Thank
right
you.
now, projects, works, anything that you dealing with now or is just coming up down the road, please tell us all about it. How people can stay connected with you, follow you, support what you do. Like I said, if nothing more, just be able to keep you lifted in prayer, and how God is using you. So tell us what you got going on, Jaden, that we need to be knowing
Yes,
about and connect
sir.
with.
Currently, I am an author now, of course. So I do have a book. It's called Emotions for a Bigger God. So it's a poetic anthology, so it's a collection of poetry that I wrote, but it's put in a way to where it tells a story from the point of which I discussed up here, of me finding God in my room that night, to me just learning and growing in conversation with God, growing in relationship with God, and being able to actually open my mouth to Him. And it just shows like the progression, some ups and downs, even when I kind of backslid, and just me getting back on top of it. And yeah, it's on Amazon. I could also send you the link to put it in the description. But yep,
That's
that's
awesome. Love that. Love that. My listeners, this brother got a book out. He is a man of God. He's testifying. He's opening up a pathway to bless people. I know whether you personally can benefit from it, even if you don't think you can personally benefit from it, you know somebody who can. Please support this young man. Please share, spread the news about the great works that he's doing, so you can get locked in and again be blessed by his story, be blessed by the messaging that God is using him to provide. And if nothing more, keep this brother lifted in prayer because it's very challenging, especially in your younger years. It's very challenging to take on in a bold and open way that you're doing. You know that hey, I'm a man of God, a man of faith. I'm not ashamed. I'm not unapologetic about it. A lot of distractions out here in this world that are looking for ways to get you off track. Whether it's like I said, whether it's the things that we see across the social media lines, whether it's wearing a little skirt, whether it's whatever it is,
Yes,
it's a
sir.
lot of it that will dangle in the enemy has no problem dangling in front of you to try to get you off track because I can guarantee you he's not happy to see you at such an early age in life, at such an early moment, doing the thing that you're doing. He sees just like I see where God is taking you, and anything that he can do to kind of get you sideways or sidetracked, he wants nothing more to make that happen. But you got a God that has your back, that's right there by you. So I say that to say, you stand firm, you stand strong, hold tight to your faith, and again, just continue to remain open and allow God to use you in whatever way He sees fit, because you clearly have an anointing on your life, man, and I just love to see that. It's, anytime I can see a young man who looks like me, totally going against the grain, totally opposite of what the stereotypes of what we supposedly gonna be like, no good, in jail, on drugs, making kids all. Clearly this young man is the total perfect example of that false narrative that's out there, that there are young black men who love the Lord, who are trying to live a life that is upright in integrity and standards and excellence. And you got to respect that, you got to appreciate that. So
Sir.
I'm thankful that I had a chance to have you be a part of this experience with me, because this is definitely a moment to celebrate, and well beyond the time that we spent here today talking. So again, man, I appreciate you more than I think man, and know that you have me you I'm in your have you in my prayers, that I want God to do nothing but just bless you in abundance, man, as only He can, man. So keep up the good work. And to my listeners, if you've enjoyed this brother being on here tonight, Jayden sharing his story, and just what we were doing this evening, the conversations that we've been having tonight, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is about. We want to encourage, we want to inspire, we want to uplift, being transparent, being vulnerable, not putting on any facades or anything like that, just keeping it real and raw. But most importantly, letting you know that there's no storm that's too big for you to overcome. It's just that you weren't equipped to carry that all by yourself. There's a God out here who loves you unconditionally, wants nothing but the best for you. And if you're not currently connected, you're not currently in relationship with Him, today is a mighty fine time for you to cry out and get connected. Make it happen. And I promise you, it'll be the best decision that you will ever make. Not telling you something that we heard, telling you something that we know from firsthand experience. And the sooner you can grab hold, the better, the easier life will be. That doesn't mean that you won't go through anything, but it's easier in the sense that you don't have to go through it by yourself. You don't have to figure it all out by yourself. That's what makes it easier. That's where even in dark times, you can see light. You can see hope. You can feel like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going through right now, but I'm gonna be okay, because the last time I was going through, He was there for me, and the time before that, He was there for me, and He's gonna continue to be there for me. So, so always keep that in mind, and definitely make that connection if you have not already. So remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is a place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight, keep leaning into God, trusting Him, embracing Him, giving it all to Him, and just allow Him to not only pour an abundance of blessings in you, but of course, equip you to be a blessing to the masses out there in just a unique, special way that He created you to be. Walk in that purpose, own it, embrace it, and just watch God just do His thing as only He can. So until next time, you have a great rest of the evening. We look forward to seeing you again. Take care of yourselves.